Well, since the opioids have become prevalent in Poplar Bluff, the amount of burglaries, domestic disputes, family interruptions have increased, I think, significantly. It's been a big problem for us. It's been going on for about probably 10 years, but it's accelerated to a point that it's very serious. We just had a meeting with the U.S. Attorney in St. Louis just a couple of weeks ago discussing this very subject and why Poplar Bluff seems to be a hub in southeast Missouri in the Boot Heel. Nobody has a good answer for. I think part of the problem with US 60 and US 67 intersecting right here in the middle of town. We're halfway between Memphis and St. Louis, about the same distance from Little Rock. It's I think a lot of the transportation of the drugs, they don't want to go down the interstates like 55 because there's a lot of interdiction that it goes on those deals. So they're coming through Poplar Bluff, I think, more so than the other areas, and that contributes to the amount that can be brought into the town by the dealers. Well, we've had to, because of the fentanyl that's being introduced with the heroin now, we've had to take different protocols on testing evidence. We just got from the Department of Justice, got a new test hood, for lack of better terms, that has air vents and stuff for testing evidence when we seize it. The best thing is we secure it, send it off to the lab, and don't even test it anymore. The fentanyl is so powerful that just a very small amount can put an officer down to a life-threatening situation. So we've had to adjust our evidence testing considerably to account for that. As far as closing the case out, the prosecutor is going to want a lab test by the forensic labs to have weight, purity, and so forth anyway. As far as charges, because we don't field test some of them now, we don't immediately get or submit charges because of that. So it's slowed down the process somewhat, but overall it's basically the same. It just takes a while. Well, my biggest thing is education, or one of my biggest things. You have to have proactive law enforcement. You have to have education, and we have to get to the younger kids to address this problem. It has to start in the home, has to start in the schools. If we don't address it with the young people at a young age, by the time they get 16, 17 or up, it's too late. They are then going to be an addict recovering versus, just as the old saying was, just say no. We need to stop it before it starts. It's been probably 10 to 12 years ago now. We had a local doctor that was supplying a lot of oxycodone, hydrocodone, Xanax, Soma, and fentanyl patches. I think that's where part of our problem started with the heroin epidemic we have now. When we worked with the Department of Human Health and Services, DEA, on this particular case, and made an arrest, the pill prices started going up so much that the St. Louis heroin dealers could come down, sell it cheaper than what the pills were. So I think that's basically where our heroin started, because there was an opening for it that wasn't here before. It affects families the most, and when I say families, it can be from the lower end of a financial scale to the higher end. There are no boundaries within the effects of heroin on the community. You can have professional people or their kids, or you can have the poor segment of society or their kids. There's no boundary for that. So it's affecting everybody in our society. Well, the lethargy, I think, is one of them, versus the methamphetamine, which you start seeing a lot of sores and hyperactivity, some schizophrenia type actions, that they're seeing things that aren't there. But with the heroin, it's more of what we used to say in my days of a downer. People are not near as active. As far as the desire for heroin, I think it's more addictive than methamphetamine. Personally, I've witnessed people on both sides of that coming out of withdrawals, and if someone is not seeing withdrawal reaction from the heroin, it's a sad situation. I could see or understand why if once they get addicted to it, that it's so hard to get off of. But you just need to pay attention if things are changing in a person's life, becoming more complacent, don't want to do anything, withdrawing from friends or activities. Just some telltale signs that is out of the norm for your friend or your loved one. Well, they certainly need to talk to that friend, family member, or another family member. And at some point, when someone gets addicted to heroin, there's just a couple of things going to happen. One, there's a good chance they may overdose and die. Or two, they're going to end up getting arrested and deal with the judicial system. So you first have to admit you have a problem to solve a problem. So when someone, they don't need to say, oh, well, they're going to get over it, or they told me they're going to quit doing it. It needs to be followed through and needs to be hands-on to try and help that person before one of those two bad things happen. Well, we have our narcotics officers talk to schools, to different civic groups. There are a few government agencies that you can refer someone to. Again, it's along the education line of admitting we have a problem, getting people to help for that, whether it be medical or psychological. And there are some groups around that do that, and we try to steer people in that direction. Well, as with the drug problem from years back, we work closely with other state agencies, other local agencies, and particularly the feds. The federal, the DEA, we have an officer assigned to the opioid task force out of Cape Girardeau that has a United States Department of Justice commission. So we work directly with our federal partners to fight this. And no one department has the resources, money, or manpower to combat the dealers in this. So you have to have help from all the agencies to combat this.